Donald Trump is not doing what Reagan did. He's not doing what George H.W. Bush did. He's not doing what George W. Bush, and he's not doing what John McCain or Bob Dole or Mitt Romney would have done. In other words, they were treating the symptoms of the progressive project, and he feels that's insufficient. He's a counter-revolutionary. So in the Trump world, he is saying, why was the border, not just close the border, why was the border open? He's saying, not just clamp down on crime, but why do these DAs let people out? He's saying, why did they do Afghanistan the way they did? Why were there 2 theater wars? And he comes up with an exegesis, and the exegesis is that there is a nexus of people on the left that do not have public support for their initiatives. So all of those initiatives that I mentioned, and we saw that in the 2024 election. This common term on the right, an 80-20 issue, a 70-30, that's to indicate that the public is behind the Trump initiatives. Okay, so he is saying they can thwart it. And how do they thwart it? They use the institutions. They use, as you say, the Government Accountability Office. We could use that as the administrative state. People within in the first term, it was people like Alexander Vindman and the National Security Council, or it was so-called Anonymous, right? Or it was Kevin Kleinsmith, the lawyer for the FBI who forged a document. These are, or it's Anthony Fauci, who was a partisan. These was Lois Lerner during the Obama. So those people are left-wing, and the unionized employees below them are left-wing, and they try to stop someone. So Donald Trump is looking at them, and how does he trying to address that? He's cutting,
yeah.
And they're angry about it.
Yeah.
And then there's the circuit and the district judges, 700 district judges, maybe cherry-picked 400 of them, and maybe a couple hundred circuit judges. That's the Court of Appeals, maybe 150 of them. And so he is going to have to start appointing judges, and they will, but he has got people in the Congress trying to say that a district judge should not have jurisdiction over the entire, there's bills in the legislature, the Senate, and the House. So he's trying to address that. He looks at the media and he says, what am I going to do with the media? Let's get rid of NPR, the subsidies, or PBS. Look at the universities. That's where they train these people, and they break the law all the time. They're not transparent as they're supposed to be about gifts from Qatar or communist China. They don't report that to the Department of Education as they should. Stanford got fined 4 years ago. They're gouging the federal government on grants, 60% instead of so he's going to go down to 15. They are not apolitical, so we'll have to look at taxing the endowment income. They don't follow the 2022 Supreme Court rulings on race. They still hire, promote, retain, and admit people by race. So we're going to go look at their federal funding. So in that whole process, those people know they're targeted as they are the revolutionaries, and he says the counter-revolutionaries are going to put you back to your constitutional place, and it's a knockout, drag-out fight. The first Republican, Reagan tried to do it with the Cold War. He said no more Kissinger détente, and it's very simple: we win, they lose. And then he tried to slash taxes, and supply-side economics. They believe that they have a mission to get into government and pursue an agenda, and it manifests itself in various ways, but the way to epitomize it or sum it up is they believe in a mandated quality of result. And he's trying to do other things as well. He's going over their heads, and he's saying to the left, I'm going to appeal to the working classes on the basis of class solidarity, no tips. I'm going to back unions if I have to in some cases. I'm going to give no cutting of Social Security. And so he's really taken the Hispanic vote and the black male vote and combined it with a white working class, and out of that he gets a 51%. And that's what also they're angry about. The elite, the black elite, the Hispanic elite have the same relationship to the working classes of those constituencies as the white working class does to Stanford professors or, NPR. They're out of touch. And he's trying to take away that group. So that's another element of why these people are going after him in every possible way. They get up in the morning at the government accounting office and say, how can I stop this person? And they go to bed thinking I didn't do enough as government people. And so they feel that people that have too much money or power or corporations or white Christian males or cisgender, whatever the term they use use mechanisms to level the playing field, they would say. And not for themselves. They're the apparatus of the old Soviet Union that have dakas on the Black Sea. But for the people, that's their agenda. It always starts with my ends are so much more noble because I'm not for greed. I'm not for inequality. I'm for mandated equality. And therefore, because I'm for that, any means necessary are justified by those noble ends. And that's what the Soviet Union was about. That's what socialism is about. That's the whole story. Once you set yourself up as a heaven on earth person or a God on earth, you can do anything and justify it. That's the history of the left. That's what they always do. That's why they're so insidious. They're so hard to defeat because they have a much better ad than the right does. The right says we're for individual liberty and freedom. And if people do better than others economically, we have incentives, religious incentives, the church. We have community. We have family incentives to be philanthropic voluntarily. But the left says, no, people are greedy. And therefore, the state has to intervene and force that, and that's a more attractive opiate, really, for many people. Donald Trump says ad nauseum, it was 2017 to 2021, and he never left his borders. He went on when George W. Bush was weakened by the Iraq War, 2008. He invaded Georgia and Ossetia. When Obama had the hot mic conversation in Seoul in 2012 in March, and he said to Medvedev, tell Vladimir that if this is my last election, if he'll give me space, I'm quoting him verbatim, I will be flexible on missile defense. And you know what nobody realizes? They both kept their bargain. He canceled Polish and Czech missile defense, which would have been handy right now given Iran threat. And Putin he behaved until Obama was reelected, and in early 2014, he said, the deal's up, and I'm going in. And Obama did not do anything. And then Biden came in. First thing he did is he put on hold javelins and other offensive weapons. And he said to tell Vladimir if he's going to conduct cyber warfare against the United States, please don't attack nonprofits, hospitals and stuff. And then they ask him, what would you do? If he says it depends on if it was a minor invasion or not. That was Biden. And then, of course, Afghanistan, the debacle, empowered. So Trump's attitude is, I didn't do any of this. They did. Now, I came in and he said two things. One was accurate. I think I mentioned the other, and one was inaccurate. He said I could stop it on the first day. He couldn't. Nobody could. But he said it wouldn't have happened if I was president. He's correct on that. So what's happened now is the left thinks, well, it's been 120 days he didn't stop the war. And he thought he was going to pressure Zelensky first, and then because he had been more understanding of other issues that may have aggrieved Vladimir Putin, such as NATO, that people in the past had promised indirectly or sometimes overtly that Ukraine would be a member of NATO, even though they had pledged to Putin they wouldn't. They were accusing Trump of trying to find reasons why he could deal with Putin. All of that is out the window now because Trump is starting to see, has an imaginary line. And that line says, to the east, I may be assassinated or dethroned because it's not enough for the military, industrial, oligarchic rulers of Russia. To the west, it is. And I've got to explain why I launched a preemptive war. They did not take Kiev. I told them we were going to take Kiev, and then we would have had the whole country. That failed. We had a puppet government. That failed. And now we had to start from scratch from the Donbass and Crimea. And I'm telling these people, I got Crimea, it's a part of Russia forever now, and that wasn't true before. It was disputed. And the same thing with the Donbass. I got a pledge that they're not going to be in NATO, and these people are saying, and you killed 1 million Russians or wounded them. That wasn't enough. Vladimir, you've got to take half of Ukraine or something. So that's the dilemma that he's in. So now he's finally mobilizing like the Soviet Union, 1944, and that economy is now a war economy. And Trump knows that. So now the irony of all this is there's only one solution to stop him, short of something stupid, and that would be Americans involved. There should be no Americans involved on the ground there. And we're violating already the rules of the Cold War, which said, as I said last time, you can't use a proxy to attack the homeland of your superpower nuclear rival. And that's what we're doing. It's a little bit tricky because he invaded and started it. Nevertheless, what Trump is now doing is he said, I didn't start the war, and nobody had given a fair hearing of Putin. I did. And he is now the aggressor, and you can't reason with him. So there's no, well, you should have been nicer. With the left, there was no plan. It was just on to Moscow. Whatever it takes is what Putin said. And people would say, but you violate, they lied to Putin. They said that it wouldn't be there was all these little questions that people on the paleo right said. That's all over with now. So Trump has kind of cleared the air. Putin won't deal with it. Zelensky will. He doesn't like Zelensky because Zelensky's always whining and nagging, and you'd give me this, give me that, gimme. But he knows now that the war wouldn't have started if Putin hadn't invaded. So then what's the next step? There's only one next step short of war, and that's a secondary boycott on all the oil that Russia sells. Putin knows that, and Donald Trump doesn't want to do that because central to his trade controversies and all of his economic program is cheap energy. And you take off 10 to 12 million barrels of exported oil off the market, and you're going to have a price shock, and it's going to hurt a lot of economies. And that means India, China, the Middle East will not be able to buy, and even Europe. Europe talks a great game, but they're still buying, I think, a quarter of all the natural gas from Russia, liquefied natural gas. So that's where we are now.
Yeah.
And the left can't say anything because they said that he was a Putin's puppet and he would never do this, and now he's considering something much more serious than anybody in the Biden administration or the Obama administration or the George W. Bush ever conceived. When they got all those people together and they said, what do we do to get him back? And that came up. And people said, we could have no secondary boycott. That would ruin the oil market. We would get this. We would get India angry at us. We get our ally. So it was a taboo subject. And now the left is going to be in a very difficult position because they're saying that he was Putin's puppet. And suddenly he comes through with an initiative that's much more radical than theirs. Radical in the sense of anti-Putin. Yeah. So we'll see if the mere threat of it, which Trump holds, that's why he says these crazy things, crazy like a fox. Now, I think Putin's gone crazy. Notice he didn't say Putin is a killer like Biden, Putin is evil. He didn't do any of that. But he says he's crazy, and crazy means, I'm so mystified. He was so rational before. Now he's temporarily crazy, but he's not a killer. That's how he does the art of the deal. It always gives somebody, he always gives somebody, he puts them in a room and shuts all the doors, and then he opens a window. You can climb out if you want. Yeah. Where when you're Biden and you just say, as long as it takes, he's a murderer, he's a killer. Did that with Saudi Arabia. They killed Khashoggi. We're not going to have anything to do with him. Then he got on all fours and crawled back before the midterms and begged them. And that's why they use the local governments. Okay, is there a state where they're in this election, did the Trump campaign, or will the Trump campaign in the midterm say, you know what? It looks like AOC is going to be the nominee against J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, just to take some names. We got to get all the red states to get her off the ballot. Let's go get her off. That's what they did. Did the Republican Party in the last 13 years basically deny the people a chance to nominate their president? No. Not since 2012 have they had an open convention. 2020, they cleared the field. Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders had won, respectively, the Iowa caucuses and Vermont and New Hampshire, and Joe Biden got Jim Clyburn to speed up the date of South Carolina, and then they got all of them out. Suddenly, within 30 days, Elizabeth Warren got out. Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, Spartacus, all of them got out. And then they coronated him. They knew he was mentally incoherent, and they used him as a waxen effigy to use these handlers, as Jake Tapper is now telling. And then we go to the next 4-year cycle. Did they nominate Joe Biden? Yes. He won 14 million votes in the primary. So he was the nominee. And then they did something that nobody's ever done in the history of modern politics. They egged Donald Trump on by having a debate challenge before either candidate had been nominated. That was a stress test. That was designed to get rid of him and deny the voice of 14 million people. And it worked. He was completely non compos mentis. They said, you're out. Blank the 14 million primary voters, and then everybody said, well, we're going to have a primary. Joe Manchin says, I might run, right?
Yeah.
And everybody said they were going to, no. Then they took 24 hours and they appointed her. And by the way, she was appointed on the basis of her gender and race, according to Joe Biden, when he pre-announced that he had limited the field. And so they really had not nominated anybody by a fair vote of the people since Barack Obama's second term. Did Donald Trump do that? No, he ran there. You know what I mean? He ran all the way. So when you look for barometers of how he's weaponized the government, it's hard to see that he's weaponizing it. We'll see. We'll see if the IRS starts to just audit people like Lois Lerner did. We'll see if Kash Patel emulates James Comey or Andrew. Maybe Kash Patel will wear a wire and he'll get Pam Bondi and they'll try to go in and tape some Democratic leader. Chuck Schumer, yeah, say he's incompetent or something. Or maybe a FBI lawyer will forge a document like Kevin Kleinsmith to get a FISA warrant. Or, maybe the FBI director in the next election will suddenly unload a bombshell, or maybe he will have a private conversation with somebody and then leak it to the New York Times. So I'm just looking for evidence that they have weaponized the government in the fashion that Biden did. And by the way, Obama did in 2016 with the DOJ. Did they give a sweetheart deal to one of the Trump kids, like they did Hunter Biden before a judge intervened? I have some legitimate, it's not me, I don't matter, but people have legitimate worries that some people around Trump are doing too much business is it going to be overt like Hunter's paintings where you're selling this junk stuff to donors? I hope not. So I don't see yet anything that he's done that is comparable to what the left does. Because the left always projects. Whatever they do, they accuse other people of doing. And so when they talk like this, there's no evidence at all. Well, Musk's point was that he's working and taking all this flack, yes, and he's only up to $200 billion. And Trump's Congress, the big beautiful bill, it's like, well, all these wealthy people in California that they pay $100,000, $200,000 in California income tax. Now they're going to be able to write up to 40 or 30. They're going to get $20,000 or $30,000 handout. And that makes me think I got to go fire another person. And then they're going to say, you're just firing this person so that these wealthy fat cats in New York, even though they're liberal, are going to get money. And then we ran on trade deficit, budget deficit, national debt. But $2.1 trillion budget deficit, and you look at this, there's some tax cuts and all this, it's not going to stop. It's not going to be tangible before the midterms where you say, we came in and we cut. And I think his argument is, if I'm going to take all the flack about cutting, I need an argument to show. So, his SpaceX blew up, and he hasn't been putting his eye on the ball. I'm not saying that he's responsible for that, but he has devoted a lot of his energies. This is a guy who used to sleep on the shop floor to cut. So what he's saying to Trump in the Republican Congress is, I was a good liberal and everybody loved me. And then I became a conservative because I thought conservative principles, among them physical sobriety, were more important. So I joined, and I got all these guys to leave their great jobs, and I've got $200 billion. I'll get up maybe to $400 billion. But what good does it do when you give these tax cuts that are not productive tax cuts? Even the tax cut on tips, I don't know if that's going to be the same thing as accelerated depreciation on business. But what he's saying is the deficit's going to grow this year under Trump. It could be $3 trillion. And then he's saying, even if you're right, for this whole thing to work, you're going to have to grow the economy from a projected 2.3 to 3 or 3.4, because you're already at 6% of GDP as deficit. And you said you were only going to be at 3, best Scott. So Kevin Hassard, who's I like him, he works at where I do, he's arguing these tax cuts and these incentives and this foreign investment are going to grow the economy at 3, even 4. And if that happens, you're not going to get $5 trillion of federal revenue. You might get 6 or 7. And so you wouldn't have a huge. And all Musk is saying is, I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is I'm the most hated man in America for trying to get these cuts. I fight for every dollar, and then your Congress just spends it like crazy. And I think it might be a parachute for him to get out and get back to Tesla without damaging he's got to be careful what he says. So he basically can't criticize Trump. He's got to criticize the Congress because he wants to be on good terms with Trump, but he knows that he's sacrificing his companies by lack of attention and public anger at him.
If you enjoyed today's video on Inner Vision, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below.